The very latest is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, welcome back. Good to see you.
Sean, it's always great to join you.
All right, we've got a lot to ask you tonight. Let me start with where do we stand right now? Where do we stand with your fellow Republicans in the U.S. Senate?
Well, the fight is in the Senate now, and the real question is whether Senate Republicans are going to unite and stand alongside House Republicans. The fight is, this afternoon I introduced 2 unanimous consent requests and asked the Senate, number one, let's pass the House continuing resolution. And Harry Reid objected. He said no, he didn't want to pass the continuing resolution. He didn't want to take off the table a government shutdown. And the second thing I introduced was a unanimous request to put in and say any amendments have to be subject to